All right. So, our goals for today, as I mentioned at the outset, this is recognizing a friend in need. We're going to be learning about mental health trends here at APU. I've got some data and figures to show you about the general student experience. Then I'm going to be talking us through what's called our 4 R's model of helping a friend in distress. So, recognize, respond, refer, and report. We're going to go ahead and walk through each of the different steps there to try and teach you how to recognize friends in need, then what to do, how to respond when you see that, and where to get extra help, where to refer those folks to, or where to report them to so that they can get the help that they need, right? And that will tie in with a conversation too about helpful resources that we have available to you as APU students. Um, so, getting on to that very first point, right? These common concerns and trends at APU. So I've got some data for you. You all have signed up for this course, so I assume that you at least have some interest in mental health, right? And some awareness of this, but also some of you are just here for the SONA credits, which that's okay by me too. So I want to sell you a little bit on why this is so important. So this is data from the National College Health Association. These are the most recent numbers I have access to, and this is all pre-pandemic, unfortunately. So we don't have new updated numbers since then. And you see that these are percentages, right? So there is a full 39% of students in the last 12 months said that they did significantly worse academically because of some type of stress that they were undergoing, right? And that's significantly worse, right? You know, got a letter grade less in a class, didn't turn in a major assignment, failed a class, right? A significant academic impact. You see other things that are up there too: anxiety and stress, depression, cold and flu, relationships, activities, family, right? Kind of all of these things together, right? These are all things that we're all coping with right now, and that stress especially may be increased for a lot of us, right, as we deal with this pandemic and we deal with this remote learning that we haven't dealt with before. So it's extremely important for your academic success to be paying attention to your mental health and well-being, and for the academic success of your friends and peers, right, that they pay attention, or you help them pay attention to their mental health as well. These are a little bit more sobering numbers. These are, again, the same survey data. These are APU specific data on well-being outcomes, right? So not just academics, but also how a person is doing. And cards on the table, I'm a therapist. That's super important to me, right? And I think it probably is to many of you as well. You see here that a full 91% of students responding to the survey said that they felt overwhelmed at least once in the last 12 months. And again, exhausted, very sad, lonely, anxious, hopeless, depressed, and considered suicide, right? Um, so this is sobering numbers to look at, right? I think there's about 30-ish of us on the call right now. So we round that to about 10% having considered self-harm, right? That's at least three of us in this call today, maybe more, right? So I want us to make sure to think about that as we're going through this. And I know that this is what makes me passionate, right? And what makes me really want to teach all of you, hopefully, how to recognize and respond to students in distress, to your friends or your peers, so that we don't lose any more lives, hopefully, and so that people, not just that, but so that people can live, well and experience thriving at APU, right? It's not just about preventing the worst, but also about having a positive experience while you're here. So. Um, I want to go into a little bit of scriptural inspiration here. I know not all of us, we're a diverse group, but APU is a Christian university, and I think scriptural inspiration is extremely important here, especially when we look at some of those numbers. They can be so daunting, right? And the process of us thinking about how we would respond or how we would help one of our fellow classmates or one of our fellow friends or whatever who is undergoing something like that, who's severely depressed, severely anxious, who may be having thoughts of suicide, it can feel super overwhelming. It can feel like we can't do anything about that. Um, and I want to encourage you that God is with us in this, right? You're not alone in the responding to a person, right? You're always have God with you in that space, but also on top of that, and you'll see as I go through my 4 R's as we're about to go through, you have other people, you have people at the university and other resources and other counselors here with you as well, right? We're just a phone call away, right? So this can be overcome if we all come together as a community and know that we're not alone and don't have to be overwhelmed by this responsibility being all on our shoulders. So that brings me to recognize, respond, refer, and report, as I said we were going to get to. I'm going to see if I can send us a file in the chat right now. Hmm. I am struggling to do that right now, and I'm not sure why. Well, I have a handout on this as well that goes along with. So I will be emailing that to you all at the end of our meeting today. So again, please put your email addresses in the form at the end of the meeting so that you can have it. But the form will just be talking about the things that are already on the screen here. Um, so I want to talk us through this with the reference to a fictional student, right? We're going to call this student Pat for the purposes here. And I'll read this out to you. Pat is an 18-year-old biblical studies major, an MEL scholar. You're noticing through your Zoom calls that Pat's appearance always seems a bit disheveled, that he has dark rings under his eyes. In addition, much of the time he seems to be preoccupied and it seems to be unable to focus during work or meetings. So this is your first question here. I haven't taught you all recognizing all the signs already, but you guys already know a lot of signs. What do you see here that are signs that Pat may be in distress? Just go ahead and start putting things in chat right now. What signs do you see? What sentences do you pick out here that are signs that Pat may be undergoing some kind of distress? Unable to focus, Tanner puts in, right? Can't focus, Jasmine as well, right? Good, really good call. That is one that you see quite a few times, almost in any type of stress or distress. And you all have probably experienced that before too. Attention is a really complicated process, being able to focus and listen and pay attention. And so that is one thing that when people get stressed, they typically lose out on fairly quickly. I'm seeing a lot of dark rings under the eyes too, right? That's a very important one as well. Sleep disturbance, right? So when we're distressed, typically our sleep will change. Some folks will sleep a lot more. Some folks will sleep a lot less, as Pat seems to be doing, right? Sleep is another big one that typically gets messed up. The preoccupation as well. Some people are noting that preoccupation, that can be a big problem. Clearly, something's on his mind, something that maybe is stressing him. Um, and lack of focus at work as well. So it's in multiple domains, not just at school. Good point, Maya. So you guys are hitting a lot of those. I think somebody put up before as well about appearance. Appearance is another big one to think about, right? We're all got our own standards of appearance, especially as we're all working remotely, right? So a little bit of casualness is, understandable, right? So I'm not trying to, police people's outfits here. That is not the opposite of what I'm trying to do. But what I'm trying to encourage is you to think about, especially if you have friends that are always coming really put together, right? And you see a marked deterioration in that, that's when you should be concerned that potentially something could be going on with that person. Um, Tanner, can you start working on getting breakout groups ready, groups of 4, so that when we get to that point, we'll be ready to go? If you can't, that's okay too, but just get started on it so we can see about that working. So good job. You guys recognized a whole bunch of the warning signs. Um, so I'm going to list out a few more here, stuff that y'all would be pretty aware of and pretty easy to spot, right? Increased substance use. And this has been happening, unfortunately, a lot in the pandemic as well. Many of us are increasing that have those negative habits potentially. Um, Marked deterioration in personal hygiene or appearance. We talked about that one already. Any kind of uncontrollability, right? The anger or crying or anything like that, where your emotions are bubbling up over your ability to contain them, clearly shows that you have a high level of emotions, right? Something is clearly distressing you. Um, any kind of preoccupation with death or dying, or of course, strange or bizarre or incoherent behavior, seeing things, hearing things, those kinds of things, right? These are all very obvious warning signs, very obvious red flags. Um, Now, I want you also to think about some of these more subtle things as you're hanging out with your friends, right? Because those are signs that somebody is in an acute crisis, right? Somebody is very much in need right then. But it would be helpful for all of us, right, if we were able to, recognize somebody in need before that, and reach out to them and lend a helping hand or help them get connected to a counselor, whatever it is that they need in that moment, obviously before they're uncontrollably crying, right? So I want you to think about some of these things as well, right? Anxiety or nervousness, agitation. You see again the forgetfulness or difficulty concentrating, right? That's something that we mentioned previously, as well as fatigue and reports of sleeplessness. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but that fatigue portion I think is incredibly important for us to think about, because let's face it, we're all college students here. Well, I'm not. I'm the one non-college student in here, but there's sometimes this sort of perverse almost bragging about the way that you don't take care of your sleep, right? Like, oh, I haven't slept in days, right? Because we got that big test coming up or something like that, right? And so it can wash off real quick, right? It can just kind of breeze past you without thinking about it, right? But that could be a sign that somebody is seriously in distress and seriously in need of help. So sometimes thinking about some of these assumptions that we make and thinking one more again, especially in this time that we're in coronavirus right now and we're in lockdown and we're in remote learning. Like, so think one more again about some of these signs of distress. Um, Hopelessness, irritability, um, another one that I wanted to notice is extreme weight gain or loss, right? Some folks will overeat or undereat depending on how stressed they are, right? So those can be another sign, but some people always think, oh, it's only just one or the other, right? That weight change is what we're looking for. It could be less or it could be more, just like sleep could be less or could be more. Both can be signs of distress, right? It's a change from typical. And another one that's interesting to think about sometimes that I encourage folks to think about because they don't necessarily have it right on the top of their head is extreme dependency, right? Sometimes we have those friends that really need us, like a lot and take up a lot of our attention and a lot of our time, right? And that's good, right? Especially if we're a close friend with them, like, and we want to be there for them and we want to support them, right? So feel free to okay, thank you, Nay. Feel free to go ahead and think about it one more again, right? If somebody's really relying on you a lot, do they maybe need some additional help too, right? Like, would it maybe be good for them to be talking to a mentor or a pastor or, a counselor in addition to you, right? In addition to your role as the person that is being their friend, right? So, I want to dive though into a few virtual signs of distress though, because we're all in this remote area right now. Um, it's actually weird what psychologists will study, but we'll study pretty much anything. And psychologists have done studies of social media posting and depression, and noticed that things like inkwell filters or any other kind of grays or blues, or especially the lack of faces, all of those can be actually predictive of distress, right? So as you're, scrolling through your feeds on whatever platforms you're using, those can be some kind of indicators that potentially a person is feeling a lot of feels at that moment, right? Um, Clear indications of distress too, right, should be taken seriously, right? So talking about suicide, sharing feelings of hopelessness, right? Again, I always want us to think one more again about some of these things that we might think as a joke. uh, Maybe think about it again and make sure that if somebody's actually asking for help, that you're paying attention. um, and negative messaging and general emotional distress that you're seeing, right? And a lot of us are seeing a lot of that as there are heightened thoughts and feelings around the upcoming election crisis, election cycle, the various crises that are going on in the world right now. So some of that is, maybe related to that, but some extreme distress that people are seeing in that and some high engagement with that might show that that person is in distress too. So those are some signs that you might see, like asynchronously, right? Seeing somebody else's feed or seeing somebody's messages. More like synchronous signs, things that you would see when you're hanging out with somebody, right? Is any kind of major changes in behavior, right? For instance, becoming really distracted and really unfocused in your Zoom classes, right? I know all of you are trying to stay focused. I know all of you get distracted time and again, and that makes sense to me. But watch out for that and watch out for changes in that, because those changes might mean they're preoccupied with something. They may be anxious, or there may be something else on their mind that's stopping them from engaging, right? So if you see the typically engaged people, on your group chats, or, in your Zoom classes or whatever, backing off of those spaces a little bit, that's another sign that I really want you guys to think about and notice as we're recognizing things. Um, Verbal cues as well, right? People will say it sometimes, right? So take people at their word. Again, one more again, paying attention in this time of crisis. So I'm gonna give us Pat again here. Um, so you express your concern for Pat's well-being because you're already good at recognizing some of those signs, and ask him how he's been doing lately. And Pat immediately breaks down, tearfully admitting to you that he's been feeling miserable ever since the quarantine got started 6 months ago. He relates that he can't sleep, can't concentrate, and really has no motivation for anything anymore. He goes on to confide in you that he's done trying to do school online and is considering dropping out of APU. So, again, put in chat, what do you all see in this second vignette from Pat? He's gone and told you some more things. What are signs that you recognize in here that Pat is in distress? Hopelessness, exactly. He's thinking of disconnecting as well, right? So that's one that I really want to go with. Disconnecting, desperation. Different people are saying that. Um, Pat's clearly here contemplating a major life change of dropping out of APU, right? Major life changes are typically things that are very important to notice for somebody being in distress, right? Now, I'm not saying like maybe Pat doesn't want to be here at APU, and that's fine. I'm not pathologizing that. I'm not saying that that's bad, right? But we want to make sure that anytime somebody's going through a major change, that they're going to feel distress, and that they get that distress worked on and sorted out so they can make a clear decision, right? Maybe Pat is just distressed and wants to drop out because of that, but could still stay if they got some help, right? Or maybe Pat's does need to drop out. Maybe that's the right choice for them, but still they're going to be distressed about that, right? um, Lack of sleep and lack of motivation, a lot of you are saying, right? Motivation has been something that I've been hearing so much in my communications with lots of students right now, right? Because this space that we're in, this COVID space, is very strange. And it's very hard to keep up that same motivation for your difficult academic pursuits that you might have previously. um, did I notice anybody mention the breakdown, right? So you notice that Pat is immediately and tearfully breaking down, right? That was on my first list of things that are really important for you to watch out for, right? Because that's a clear expression of strong emotional feeling, right? So there's clearly a high level of distress that he's undergoing, right? Okay, good job. Everybody hit those rather well there. All right. So, getting back to it, and welcoming back the people that are watching the recording. Um, Once you've recognized somebody is in distress, though, obviously we need to do something about that, right? Hopefully, we can find some way to meet them where they're at and help them to connect to the resources that they need to feel comfortable and to be able to start coming out of whatever it is that is distressing them, right? So that leads us into our second R, into respond. Now, the biggest thing that I want to highlight for you in the respond section is really about empathy, right? Um, you've all probably had the experience before of somebody just like really getting you, right? And maybe even the experience of talking out a problem that you're having and you don't even necessarily need or want advice from that person, right? Because they maybe don't have the advice or they don't have the knowledge needed to help you move forward, right? But they can listen and they can feel with you and empathize with you, right? So when we do that, we want to really just take a person seriously, right? And really listen to what's going on with them. Don't be distracted. Don't be on your phone, trying to do a million things at once. When you're responding to somebody in distress, we want to give them our full attention and we want to take time with them, right? Just even if you're thinking like, oh, I clearly see that this person's in a lot of distress, like I know, I want to get to like the point already kind of thing, and have them tell me what's wrong. Let them warm up to you. Just ask questions, be an attentive listener, and let them get in their own time to what it is that's going on with them and what it is that's distressing them. Um, I want you to encourage you to ask purposeful questions, right, that communicate your concern for folks, right? This is especially true, and this is one that I always like to talk about because it's a little bit of a myth that goes on. Is that talking about thoughts of self-harm or thoughts of suicide, if a person is experiencing those things, that talking about those things will make it worse, right? That talking about those things will put them in the head of somebody that's not thinking about that, or that talking about those things, is taboo or will increase the risk in some way. We know from all the good psychological research that that's not true. um, Asking about it, the worst thing that can happen, right, is somebody says, no, I'm not, that's not where I'm at. And then that's good, right? You know that that person's safe, and that's awesome, right? Versus if you do have a chance to ask about that and somebody has been experiencing those things, it's incredibly freeing to actually be able to share it, right? Because it's so intimidating and so stigmatized to be having those feelings and be having those thoughts that sometimes we struggle to tell even our closest friends about them. So if you're recognizing somebody in distress and responding to them, and they start talking about death, or they start talking about hopelessness or despair, right? Take those cues and ask openly, like, hey, are have you been thinking about hurting yourself? Are you okay? Right? And that actually can give them the opening to tell you something that they maybe have been wanting to tell you but felt like they couldn't, right? um, and then solar is the acronym that we have here. It's a little bit hard because we're all on Zoom, and many of your calls will be on Zoom, but it applies to Zoom in some sense, and it really applies when you're in person with somebody. So you want to square up with whoever you're talking to. You want to have a sort of open posture. You want to lean in, a little bit to show that you're paying attention. Obviously, lean in appropriately. Don't like lean in, right? That would be really weird. It's weird on Zoom, and it would be really weird in person too, right? So a slight lean in, making eye contact with whoever you're talking to. I know I'm making eye contact with my camera right now rather than with all of you. And then the R is relax, right? Because somebody's in major distress in front of you, you're freaking out, you're trying to remember what did Nathaniel say was a good idea to do in this space, right? Relax. You're friends with this person, or individual, or you at least know them, right? You're good at talking to people, you're personable, you've been talking to people and making friends for, you know 18 to 25 years, or how old all of the people are in this group. So lean into those things. You're okay. This is just another conversation. It's an important conversation, but those same skills that help you to be a good conversationalist in general will help you in this space too. And the biggest way that we want to focus is just to instill some kind of hope. That has to feel really, really hard right now where you're at. You know, I hope that things can get better. I think things can get better. Let's figure out how to do that together with you. The O is open posture. So open shoulders, right? Rather than closed down or crossed arms or things like that, right? An open and relaxed posture. So a few things not to do. Um, you should really avoid ever leaving someone with suicidal thoughts alone, right? So if you're on a call with them and they tell you, hey, I've been thinking about hurting myself, hey, I've been thinking about killing myself, okay, let's stay on the call together until we can contact, a professional to help with this, to figure out what could be helpful for you, right? And I'll go into some of those resources later. But national crisis lines or the APU crisis line or anything like that. So if you're in person or if you're on the phone, don't hang up, don't leave until you get somebody in that can help with the seriousness of that, right? Because it could be life threatening, right? Um, Again, about the empathy point that I was making, it's not a good time to debate or argue or lecture about morality. You probably have friends that you have differences of opinion with, right? You can think that they're making dumb actions that has led them to this position that they're in, or that they're making a mountain out of a molehill or something like that, right? Blowing something up. If somebody's really in distress, that's the last thing that will help them. Arguing with them, telling them that they're wrong, telling them that their problems aren't a big deal, right? Don't argue with somebody that's in distress. Feel that distress with them and join them in that, right? You can still believe yourself too, right, that you are right and they're wrong, but you don't have to, make that clear to them, right? And especially too, and this is a kind of interesting one about challenging someone's beliefs about themselves, right? A lot of times people that are in a lot of distress will, maybe they're having some kind of self-esteem issues, right? I just can't do this, or I'm just no good, or, like I can't succeed at this, right? And sometimes we immediately want to push back, right? Especially if they're our friends, right? We want to say something like, no, of course you can, right? Of course you're a valuable person. Of course you're worthwhile. Of course life's worth living. Of course, you're great. And that can be helpful in some ways. Sometimes it's a little bit encouraging, right? But also sometimes it can feel like we're forcing the positivity, right? That we're just trying to pretend like everything's all fine, everything is flowers and roses, when it's really not. you know when they really are a good person with worth and value and importance, but like they don't feel that. And so if you push right into that, then that's not necessarily going to help them out, right? So the empathy, that meeting them where they're at, is hugely important. And then um, acting shocked or being ambiguous, I would try and avoid as well, right? As much as you can. um, Whenever you're talking to somebody, you say, hey, let me support you. How can I help you, right? Like, let's get specific about it. What would be helpful for me to do for you in this time? Not like I'm thinking of you vaguely, right? But rather, what you're going to do, how you're going to work it through together. um, so that's the section that I have on responding, right? So now I'm going to move us into our second breakout. I think our final breakout for today. We're going to spend a little bit longer on this breakout. Um, and I want us to get into pairs. And so I'm going to, again, send you off into your breakout rooms, smaller breakout rooms this time. And we're going to have basically an actor and a listener role, right? So the actor, I want you to think of some distressing situation that you can act out for the listener to respond to, right? So it could be something from your life that you feel comfortable talking about. It could be something entirely made up if you'd like to keep your life private, but something that's distressing that you can kind of talk about a little bit and get some empathic support from the other person from. Also, I encourage you. All of us have gone through different amounts of things, so pick something that you feel you can handle, right? I don't want this course right now to be triggering any traumas that you're necessarily still coping with or still dealing with, right? So pick something that is distressing to you, but you can feel like you can talk about without necessarily totally breaking down. Um, and you're going to start acting that out, whether that situation is your situation or a fake situation or the Pat situation or whatever, right? And the listener, I want you to practice listening, right? Just like we talked about, making that, eye contact, making that open posture, leaning in, eye contact, relaxed, right? And just listen and make comments and ask questions and all those kinds of things. You're a conversationalist, you've been practicing conversation all your life, but really really focus on the empathy, really trying to meet the other person where they're at and hear what has been causing them, right? And we'll do this for a few minutes together, and then I'll have us do a real quick switch around, right? So that the actor will become the listener will become the actor, and then the final step will be for each of you to give each other feedback, right? Just how was that for you? Like, thanks for listening, et cetera, kind of thing. What was helpful, what wasn't helpful, so we each get help and feedback. All right, so we're recording again. So like I said, hopefully that was a helpful breakout. Apologize if it was not. We're going to go into our pat dialogue one more time as we move into referring and reporting, right? So some further questioning leads you to believe that Pat still has hope that things can get better, but he admits that he's not sure what to do next. And you ask if you can help get him connected with other AP resources, and he likes the idea. So, what do you do with Pat? You can help refer Pat if you want to. You may all know about some of these resources already, but the um, university has probably more resources to support you than you may unfortunately ever have the opportunity to have, after your time as a student here, right? And we have the University Counseling Center that I'm a member of. That's why I put myself first on this list here. We're totally free therapy for all enrolled students. So if anybody ever needs that, whether or not you want to sign up for a few therapy sessions, or whether or not you just want to try it out once, or whether or not you just want to sign up for just one real quick question and answer session with a therapist to get some input on something. We call those solution sessions. They're always available to you. Um, there's other resources around on campus as well: Academic Success Center, Student Financial Services, all of these different resources. But I'm wondering if people can, put in chat anything that they have been connecting with at school, whether those are helpful offices that you found that have helped you out, or whether it's like clubs or organizations that you're a part of, or anything like that, things that have helped you when you've needed help at APU. So feel free to put in chat any kind of suggestions of offices. That way we can all share our knowledge together of offices that have helped you, whether it's an academic thing, whether it's a social and getting connected thing, whether, or if it's an emotional thing as well. Go ahead and throw some things there in the chat. I've seen tutoring services is really helpful. Pastoral care, that's another really good point. Pastoral care is something that I got to work with the pastoral care interns a bit recently, and they're awesome. So contact them if you ever want to. Writing center, I love writing center, especially because there's so much writing in college. And I've gotten a chance to work with their folks a few times. It's really nice how accepting they are of any stage of the project. A lot of writing centers at a lot of universities, you really have to be put together before you go. I'm seeing a lot of love for alpha in the chat right now. Alpha groups are great if you want to sign up to be an alpha group or become an alpha group leader. D groups, the same center. Career center. Yeah, wow. I'm seeing a lot of stuff here. I don't know what the LRC is, Tanner. What's the LRC? Well, Trio, a lot of love for Trio. That's one of my favorite programs. We just did a collaboration with the other day. So great. So see, there's a lot of these different types of resources, right? So please feel free, to connect to any of these resources. Anything that people mentioned today that sounds at all interesting to you, check it out. Check out their website or check out their social medias or whatever. Maybe it's something that could help you out, or maybe that it's something that could help out responding when you're responding to a friend in need. Want to shout out the Office of Women's Development as well. That's one we didn't talk about yet. They're doing their annual clothesline project right now. Student Center for Reconciliation and Diversity too, I think, is another one that we should shout out. They're doing a lot of great work right now. They just did an Instagram live today with their DIA group, which is super cool. So you guys check that out on their socials if you want. But yeah, so there's a ton of resources that I haven't even listed on here, as you guys have put in the chat. So the resource obviously that I find, most important, because I'm a homer, right? I am a counselor at the counseling center, is our university counseling center. And I want you all right now to take a screenshot or get out your phone and take a picture of your screen real quick, or however you want to do it, just so that you have this number with you, the 626-815-2109, 626-815-2109. Take a screenshot, take a picture on your phone, type it in as a contact, do it right now. Because this is 100% free mental health services to all of you as students, which is something that you may not have access to once you graduate. And we're a 24/7 service too, right? So if you're ever sitting with somebody, or you yourself are going through something and you don't know where to go or who to call, all these resources we listed off were great, but it's 2 a.m. right now and I can't get in touch with my alpha leader, or Trio's not going to be back in the office until the next Monday, right? Give us a call. We're 24/7, 365. So, and we'd be happy to talk you through whatever crisis you're going through, or just answer a question, or talk you through how to help a friend, any of that kind of thing. We're always available for you. This is where we are physically located on campus. We're right there in the Shire Mods next to the health center. Obviously, we're not on campus right now, though. God willing, we will be soon, and we'll be back in our offices. But right now, we're doing all of our meetings over Zoom. So you don't have to worry about whether or not you're on campus, whether you're living at home, any of those kinds of things. You can still connect with us through Zoom. I know it's not an ideal form of therapy, but it is an ideal form as long as, unfortunately, we're in a pandemic. An important one more thing to note: this is a very rare occasion, but if somebody who is suicidal has a weapon, or has ingested, a poisonous substance already or something like that, then please do call 911. That probably will not, come up, hopefully, but just so that I throw that in there, just in case that happens, if somebody's life is imminently at risk, please do call 911. And finally, the last R that I'm on to is report here, which sounds weird, right? Because a lot of times when you're working with a friend and you're recognizing them in distress, one of the first things you do is like, keep their confidence and keep their privacy, right? So I would highly encourage you, if somebody's comfortable, however, or if you're going through something yourself and you're comfortable, let somebody at the university know, because we can file what's called a care team report, right? And so, just like we saw today in all of those messages in the chat, how many different offices people listed off, how many I had listed on my slide, how many more are listed on the handout that I gave you guys, like, there's just a lot of things at APU, and it can get overwhelming, especially when you're already overwhelmed, right? Like, you're supposed to remember all the different offices that you can go to. When I'm like breaking down crying right now, like, that's not very helpful, right? So please make sure, if you want to, reach out to APU Cares, right? So any faculty member, any staff member, if you tell them, hey, I'm not okay, or hey, my friend's not okay, I want to make an APU Cares report, they'll go ahead and tell our cares team, which it has dedicated representatives whose job it is to know all of the right resources, and they reach out to you. They'll send you an email within a week or within a couple of days, usually, but a week tops, with a bunch of resources that they would suggest might help for you. And they might suggest having a meeting where you could talk more about what's specifically going on, so they could refer even more resources that might be able to help you out, right? That's an extremely helpful service that I think we have at APU, and that's one of the reasons why I would encourage, reporting, with consent, obviously, to somebody at the university, so that we can activate those resources, so we can tell you about things that you don't know about. So I'm not going to do this last one as a breakout group. I'm just going to have each of you do it by yourselves right now. Um, what is the most surprising thing that I talked about today? What is the most surprising thing that you learned today? Make a mental note of it, like, so that you remember it, right? Because clearly it was unique information that you might not have heard before. Make a mental note of the most surprising thing that you learned today. And I think even more importantly, make a mental note of one thing that you learned today, or you could even make this a physical note if you wanted to. One thing that you learned today that you want to try and incorporate into your life, into your week, right? One thing that you want to be more aware of, whether it's being more aware of people that are posting, like a whole bunch of gray and blue filters on Instagram and checking in on them, whether it's something that you want to do about, connecting with one of these resources that we talked about today. Anything that we talked about today, one thing that you want to take away from this workshop we did today and try and use going forward in your life. Jot it down real quick on your phone, on a piece of paper, whatever it is. Um, and thank you so very much for attending. So um, I'll open it up for questions. I'll spend the remaining of our time on questions, but I wanted to pull up our future schedule right now. So all of you that were able to join today, thank you so much. I'm glad that we had you. We'll be doing this for the next today and the next 5 Fridays going forward, each on different topics. Next week, we're going to do becoming a better listener. So if you want to join us for that, feel free. Again, you can still get Sona credits for these. And if you're able to attend 4, we can give you a certificate of completion, and you can put that on your resume if that's helpful for you getting internships and things like that. So we'd love to have you at more of these if you'd like to join. And finally, as I mentioned before, we want a feedback survey from you, especially because this is brand new to Zoom. And I know we had a lot of kinks today trying to work out and trying to figure out. If you could please load up that link there, the bit.ly/cougcare1. It should load you into a survey monkey with just a brief 7 questions about our learning objectives today, what we did well, what we can do better in the future. And then also the very last, the 8th question, will be your name and email address, so that we can make sure to verify your attendance if you need Sona credits, or if you need or to get that certificate of completion, or if you have another professor or somebody that's giving you credit for coming to these. So make sure to complete that if you need completion credits. Um, so with that, get open your phone, start doing the survey monkey if you'd like, and I'm open to any questions anybody that has. You can private message them to me in the chat. You can just post them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask them if you'd like to. Where is the file for the 4 Rs? And then if we can't make, say, the next week's workshop, where do we get the recorded video? Thank you, Maya. I will resend the file for the 4 Rs right now. So this is the handout version of this presentation today. So hopefully everybody got that. And these recordings, once we've done them all, we're going to be starting a YouTube channel. We actually don't have one right now, but we'll start a YouTube channel so we can throw those all up on there. And if you want to email me again at nfernandez@apu.edu, I'm collecting a list of people that are interested in the recording. So if you email me and let me know you're interested, I'll put you on the list and email you them when we're ready. You can also follow us on Instagram at APU Counseling. And we'll post there once all of the recordings are done and available and let you know how to find them. So thank you for that question, Maya. Any other questions?
I sent you an email about my Sona credits. Is there anything else I need to do?
Nope. I will look at my emails once we're done here today. Many of you sent me emails as you were trying to get on. I apologize for that. So I'll respond to you all. If you do not get a response from me, though, then please do send me a follow-up email, but I'll be responding to those probably Monday or Tuesday, just so that everybody, will make sure we get you all of the things that you need. So thank you for that question, Alexa. Um,
Thank
the survey link is not working. Is anybody else having a problem with the survey link? A few of you are having problems. Please make sure to follow the capitalization. So it's all lowercase letters. On Bitly links, they are cap sensitive. So check that out and make sure that it's working.